AliCamp 2024. Beau Vass. A false sense of accessibility. What automated testing tools are missing. AliCamp 2024 is brought to you by our gold sponsors Intopia and ANZ, silver sponsor Canva, and Auslan sponsor SignHow.
Thank you. Hello everyone, it's nice to be here. So you might be thinking automated accessibility testing tools doesn't sound like the most fun to have right before the afternoon break. But let me tell you, you're absolutely right. It's not about fun, it's more about information. So let's get through this next 20 minutes nice and quickly. So firstly, what is an automated testing tool? So basically, these are tools that you can run that will check for a set of accessibility issues on your website, or various things, but I'm focused on desktop websites mostly for this presentation. And so it'll go through basically test a rule set. Now, they can all apply sort of different rules each time, but they're all mostly based on the WCAG guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And they all kind of test in a relatively similar way. So some of these types of tools that you might have used before or heard about. So there's browser-based tools like Wave, Axe Dev Tools, and Google Lighthouse. And so we can see just on these screenshots here, Wave shows 0 errors. It's showing a few alerts, some things that you need to check out a bit further manually. Axe Dev Tools just showing 0 issues for this test. Google Lighthouse takes a bit of a different approach, gives you a score out of 100, and uses a color system. And this color for the score of 100, I could only describe best as success green. So it definitely makes you feel pretty good if you get that test result. No issues, or 100 out of 100 definitely sounds very good, despite it telling you in that same Lighthouse screenshot there's a whole bunch of manual things that you should check as well. So that's interesting. Another type of tool is a crawler, so that can go through and test multiple pages at the same time and can collate the results, and you can have tests that you can rerun later as well. There are code linters, so that will highlight potential accessibility issues as development is happening, so that can be in the code editor, or it might be in your code repository or pull request system where you can use those potential errors that it's finding. Or there's also embedded tools that could be constantly running on a website and give you somewhat up-to-date results, but they all work in a kind of similar way. Each of those have their different strengths and weaknesses, and we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about what the issue detection is like for all of these, and they all operate in a very similar way and find very similar issues and also miss very similar issues. So a stat you might have heard before, I don't know if we can call it a stat, but a statement you've probably heard is that automated testing tools will find around about 20 to 30% of accessibility issues. So while that's widely stated, what isn't as widely stated is what that actually means in practice. What are the issues that these tools can find, and what issues are they actually missing? It just gets kind of bandied around as a number a lot of the time. So I want to just put a little bit of substance behind that statement and the numbers, and maybe even have a think about where that number comes from. So we're going to focus on issues related to images. And this is a very WCAG-focused thing as well, it's worth keeping in mind. So automated tools are testing generally for WCAG issues, and as we've spoken about in previous talks today, accessibility is about a lot more than WCAG. WCAG is just one part of it. So for the first few examples we're going to look at, we're going to use this image here as an example. I'm going to use it as an example for both informative image situations and decorative image situations, just for example's sake. And just to describe this image, so it shows 2 laptop computers on a light-coloured surface, presumably a table. The laptops are back-to-back, facing opposite edges of the long edge of the surface. One has 2 hands using the keyboard, and the other one has 1 hand using the trackpad. There's some books and papers and stationery positioned around the table as well. So our first example is one that an automated tool can find. So we're 1 for 1 so far. Sounds pretty good. Google success green for this one. So we've got here, the image doesn't have an alt attribute. So every image element, that is the IMG HTML element, needs to have the alt attribute. If it's decorative, that would be an empty value. If it's an informative image, then it should have a description. In this case, in our code sample here, we've got the image element, we've got the source of laptops.jpg, and there's nothing else in that element. There's no alt attribute, so the automated tool can pick that up quite easily. However, if we add the alt attribute in, and it's empty, but this image was supposed to be informative, then that is a failure, a WCAG failure. But the automated tool won't pick that up because the automated tool has no idea whether that is an informative or decorative image. So it'll just assume that you got that right and that that's a decorative image. So it will completely miss an informative image in that instance. Then if we flip that situation around and say we've got an alt text description and here we've got generic laptops image for decoration. So a bit of a hint there that it might be a decorative image in the alt text. But the automated tools will not pick this up as a decorative image because, again, it has no idea that it's supposed to be decorative. So it's another one that it's missing. And then we've got an informative image that does have a description. Okay, so maybe they've got this right. So let's just see, we've got the alt text description there, a blueberry cheesecake in the middle of a black table. So it's slightly off, I think, unless it's a very laptop decorated blueberry cheesecake. So that's the wrong alt text, that's an accessibility failure, and yet the automated tool has no idea that that's a failure. So another way of bringing images into a website is to have them included via CSS rather than the image element. So we've got a div here with a class myImage, and presumably the CSS on that class that is bringing in an image. So that might be a background image, it might be a font icon that could be getting brought in, could be an image sprite if anyone here has been a developer long enough to remember what they are. Actually, saw an example just yesterday, so they still exist. It's probably a really old website, but if you don't know what that is, ask the old people in the room and they'll know. So automated tool will not even recognize that this is an image because there's nothing to tell it that it is. It's a div, and as we heard in the last presentation, there's no semantics to a div, so automated tool has no idea. So what we can do, as we also heard in the last presentation, we can add a role to that div to give it the semantics so that automated tools and assistive technology will know that that is supposed to be an image. So if we added that in this instance, now the automated tool can pick up that that is supposed to be an image, and now it's looking for the alternative text, which is not there. And in the case of using a role equals image, you would use an ARIA label or ARIA labeling of some kind to add the alt text. And that's not there, so the automated tool has picked this up. Okay, so that's the second win for the automated tools. Sounds like they're coming for us when I put it like that. Hopefully not. They can't shoot straight anyway, so it's okay. The problem with this is the same problem as we had just earlier. So we've added an ARIA label to this role equals image div. And this time the description is mud cake with mint frosting. And none of these descriptions are hints at what's for afternoon tea. So don't get upset if there's no mud cake with mint frosting. So yeah, the automated tool can't pick up that this is completely inaccurate because we're still using that laptop's image as the example here. Now let's look at a different example using the role equals image being misused. So we've got a piece of web content here. We've got a heading, we've got paragraph text, and we've got a link. And so the paragraph text is highlighted in this screenshot. And so the paragraph text says, we support you to embed accessibility into the way that you work and manage accessibility on your behalf. But in the code sample, we've got the paragraph tag there with the role equals image. So someone has added role equals image. And so now semantically that automated tools and assistive technology are going to think that that's an image. So an automated tool will not tell you that this is a problem, basically. But it will pick up an issue here. Does anyone know the issue that this scenario would pick up? I hear alt text murmurings, exactly, yeah. So it's going to tell us that this image does not have alternative text. So the recommendation that Axe makes about this, and they probably all do, similar advice, I'm not picking on Axe here. So the recommendation to solve this problem according to Axe is to fix at least one of the following. ARIA label attribute does not exist or is empty. ARIA labeled by attribute does not exist. References elements that do not exist, or references elements that are empty, or the element has no title attribute. So if whoever put role equals image on this paragraph tag, wasn't me, definitely wasn't me, if they followed this advice and added an ARIA label with something that maybe describes what the content is, so they might put ARIA label equals what we do, this will pass the automated tool. It is what it asks for, so I guess it should. But clearly, this is not an image, it's a piece of paragraph text. And so what that would mean for a screen reader is that it will announce graphic, or it will announce that it's an image of some kind, and it will say what we do. And it will completely ignore the rest of that paragraph, that whole paragraph. So that's unavailable to a screen reader user, and yet not only does the automated tool not pick this up, but it told us to do it. So not good. And another example is complex images. So we have an image here of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we've got there's a heading in this image, there's some paragraph text, and there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. It's got the 5 layers of that pyramid, and then it's got paragraph text descriptions of each of those elements. And with a complex image, what we'd normally do is you wouldn't put, so I should say a complex image would be an image that requires a long description. So it's usually a complicated process or things like that. So if we had to describe this pyramid and maybe some of the explanations around it, then we would have a long description, and you'd normally not put that in the alt attribute value. You'd put that somewhere else on the page. And then in the alt text value, you'd do something like we've got here, where we've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs as like a title or a high-level summary. And then we say that the detailed description follows the image, or wherever that description can be found. The automated tool will not find an issue here if you did not include the long description somewhere, or if you put it in the wrong place. The automated tool doesn't know. All it knows is that there's an image, it has an alt tag, an alt attribute, and that's all it cares about. So this will not be picked up as an issue. And a few bonus issues with this. Color contrast within an image, it's not going to pick that up. It doesn't reliably pick up color contrast in general. It picks up a lot of them, but a lot of them it gets wrong. And whether images of text are present, it won't pick that up either. But wait, there's more, a lot more. So I've got a slide here with a lot more on it because we didn't have time to go through this. So there's captions and transcripts for videos, or whether they're accurate. There's form error validations, multiple issues around that. Keyboard functionality, focus order, focus management that Michelle and Nick looked at a bit earlier with their app. None of that. It doesn't know where focus is getting sent to the right place or not. Custom components, like we just talked about in Sarah's presentation. Tab components, accordion components, custom form field controls. None of that will be picked up if the appropriate role isn't added or isn't added correctly. Accurate headings, links, and labels. The heading structure in the context of the content, can't pick any of that up. Whether the website is responsive to Zoom or a custom user test settings, it can't pick up any of that if there's content lost. And whether there is hidden content or visible content that should or shouldn't be available to screen reader users, because both of those are necessary for an accessible website. Automated tool can't pick up that either. And there's actually more, but clearly they wouldn't fit on this slide, so I didn't include them, but there's heaps more as well that automated tools won't find. So if 20 to 30% of issues can be found, then 70 to 80% of issues will not be found. And I think that when I think about it that way, it makes me really question how useful automated tools are, and maybe 20 to 30% found sounds better than 70 to 80% not found. And then there's the question of where does the 20 to 30% actually come from? There's no definitive list of accessibility issues. There's an infinite number of accessibility issues that you can find in a website. So there is no real way to measure it. So I feel like that number's just been something that's kind of been thrown around and everyone's kind of accepted it. Maybe some people don't want to upset the automated tool companies because some of those types of companies can come after you sometimes. So yeah, I really question where that number comes from. I've heard stories about maybe that it comes from how many success criterion that automated tools can test for. But when I had a look at it, I couldn't find one single success criterion that an automated tool could fully test for 100%. So I feel like, I don't know about this 20 to 30% thing. I think that everyone's just kind of accepted it and we've not really thought about it much because who would think about that in any more depth except me right now doing this presentation. That's why I'm here, right before afternoon tea for the mud cake with mint frosting. So I think we should change the narrative around automated tool testing and accessibility. I think that if we said 10 to 15% of issues are found, that would be probably a much more accurate number. And I think that's still very generous. When you looked at that slide with the massive list on it that probably no one read, with all those different types of issues, that's a lot of issues. They're very high impact issues as well, a lot of those. And if they're not finding those issues, I feel like maybe saying 10 to 15% found is a bit more accurate. And so if we flip that number again, that means 85 to 90% of accessibility issues are being missed by automated tools. So that's a high level of inefficiency. So my key takeaways here are that automated tools can have their place, but they barely scratch the surface of accessibility. So it's essential to understand the limitations when you're using them, and it's essential to try and mitigate them. So if you're using automated tools alone, even if you get a perfect score, even if you get success green on your score, even if you fix every issue that an automated tool can come up with, it's not going to mean that your content is accessible. And it'll actually most likely result in a highly inaccessible experience if automated tooling is the only thing that you're relying on. So some things you can do to build up your knowledge and skills. Beware of misinformation online because there's a lot of different people with opinions about accessibility, but they don't always actually know what they're talking about. So it's important to vet the source of that information as much as you can. Make incremental improvements to your work. So you don't have to start doing 100% of accessibility perfectly from tomorrow, but try to start picking up a little bit at a time in the things that you do and the way you work, and then build on that over time. Learn about manual testing techniques as well. Things like using a keyboard and using a screen reader are very important, and they will help to cover a lot of those gaps that automated tools are missing. Engage with external agencies for an audit and compare the gaps between what the automated tool is telling you and what a proper audit from an agency is telling you, and learn from the gaps so that you can do the work better from the start and you're not relying as much on testing at all, let alone the automated testing. And then once you get your website to a level where the accessibility testing side of things, you're doing things quite well, then user testing with people with disabilities is the next step to take to make your product as accessible as possible. That's going to tell you a lot of things about what your users actually do and what real users using assistive technology experiencing when they use your website. Just before I finish as well, this is just focused on issue detection, mostly this presentation. There's a lot of other issues around automated testing tools that I'd love to get into at some point, but I don't have time today. So stay tuned, connect with me on LinkedIn, and yeah, follow some more things about automated testing tools and a whole lot of other stuff if you follow me there. So thanks very much for your attention right before the afternoon tea break, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Ali Camp 2024.